Jack is famously known as a charming playboy. He treats every girlfriend well, giving them whatever they want. Except for marriage. Everyone knows that he has never gotten over his breakup with his first love. He can't seem to take things to that level with other girls. In the 5th month of our relationship, my family was pushing me hard. I had no choice but to say goodbye to him. I heard your first love is coming back. Congratulations. He smiled, yeah. That night, his friends threw him a bachelor party. The venue was large and lively, and someone mentioned me, Jack. I think I just saw Miranda, and she was with a pretty handsome guy. As the conversation ended, everyone began gossiping, causing quite a stir. Jack suddenly lost his temper, extinguishing the cigarette in his hand, and coldly laughed. It was her who said we should be together, and it was also her who brought up breaking up. Is there really such a good thing in this world? Chapter 1. When I first got together with Jack, his friends placed bets. They went all out, betting on whether our relationship could last more than a month. He comes from a prominent family and has a well-known reputation. When I first met him, I heard my roommate say, the Bai family in North City is not to be trifled with. But this third young master Bai is a bit different. I've heard he's easy to pursue and never loses his temper with girls, parting amicably with each of his girlfriends. These words are not empty promises. But between us, there really isn't a notion of who is pursuing whom. At that time, I was still in my 2nd year of graduate school, working on a research project with my advisor, and I needed to find a rare English monograph that was already out of print. It was hard to come by. I posted many messages online, but they all fell into silence. Just when I thought there was no hope, someone finally replied, with a tone that was somewhat cynical yet quite serious. I think my old man has a copy. If you want it, contact me. Consider it a good deed. I immediately got in touch with him. After that, to thank him, we exchanged messages a couple more times, and we got along very well. In our last encounter, he stood under the streetlight, looking handsome, and seemingly recalling something. He raised an eyebrow and asked me, will we meet again in the future? In the future, as spring goes and autumn comes, year after year, will we meet again? The moonlight is cold, just the right time and scenery. If I were to say I haven't seen you, it would inevitably leave one feeling lost. By some strange twist of fate, I smiled, not wanting to show weakness, and asked him, I heard you were easy to pursue. Is that true? He looked at me and couldn't help but laugh. Then why don't you give it a try? When I was still inexperienced in the world, I met someone like that, carefree, composed, and strong, making one unconsciously want to get closer. Moreover, I had seen him a long time ago. I had just arrived in the city, and at the station, my wallet was stolen. I had nothing on me, and after filing the report, it started to rain, leaving me in a dire state, and I cried heavily. He drove by me, casually asking, where are you going? Can I give you a ride? Naturally, I didn't dare to get into his car. He remained calm and patiently persuaded me. I'm not a bad person. Trust me just this once. Don't cry, okay? I always wanted to thank him later, but we never met again. In this city with so many people, having a brief encounter and exchanging a few words is truly a rare thing. Not long after that day, we were together. When my roommate found out about this, she was quite surprised for a while, finally saying, dating someone like him should be pretty good, right? But I heard he never stays with any girlfriend for more than half a month. Let's just take it as living in the moment. I said, yes, living in the moment. Everyone has their naive moments. At that time, I thought that love was just about following one's heart. When I liked him, I didn't care about his past. I only wanted a future with him. But later I realized, that's not the case. Take that bet for example. Clearly Jack's girlfriends never lasted more than half a month. Why did his friends, those rich kids, bet on a month? A long time later, I finally understood that the extra half month was because I resembled his first love by 3 parts. Chapter 2. That wager. The loser took a large part of it. Because Unexpectedly to everyone, my relationship with Jack is very good. It's quite different from those I had with him before. He rarely takes the initiative, but every day he comes to find me for lunch or dinner. There was a time when I was extremely busy, and he would wait for me at the school gate, waiting for more than half an hour. I felt embarrassed and pulled him to say I wanted to treat him to something nice, and he tugged at my sleeve, stifling a laugh. Your boyfriend wants to eat at the cafeteria. After saying that, he paused for a moment, seeking my opinion. Is that okay? Actually, I understood that he didn't want me to go back and forth, because before this, I had heard that when he was studying, he was quite precious and never ate at the cafeteria. The young master of the Bai family has the capital to be arrogant. We never broke up. Our relationship was surprisingly good. In the 3rd month of being together, he moved near my school. We spent more and more time together. He specially set up a cinema at home, and during our leisure time, we would snuggle on the sofa watching movies. He was actually not very interested in these, but I liked them every time. He would patiently accompany me from start to finish. When I encountered a movie I particularly liked, he would seriously take notes and write reviews. His grandfather is a very famous painter, and he learned a bit from him over the years, showing considerable skill. During those days, he would occasionally draw me. Among them, there is one that I remember vividly, a girl standing under a camphor tree, holding a stack of books, with delicate features and a bright smile. But I have always wanted to ask him, at that time when we had just met, how could I smile so radiantly when I was still so reserved? Later, there was a late night. That was our first time. My project encountered some problems, and after he learned about it, he patiently guided me, his fingers lightly tapping on my waist, his posture relaxed. Got it? I suddenly realized, then joyfully hugged him back. He looked at me, his gaze gradually deepening, and finally leaned forward, his thin lips slightly moving, the touch cool. He is a bit nervous, but still appears nonchalant, gripping my hand. Miranda. Halfway through, he lowered his voice, mentioning the painting, saying, when we first met, you were standing there, and I really wanted to capture that moment. I smiled, kissed his neck, and hinted, did you do the same with your previous girlfriends? Whispering softly in tenderness and intimacy, recounting the moments of our first encounter. He clicked his tongue, playfully pushing against me. You go ask. Which one of us has gotten this far? The ambiguity flowed silently, and later, I could no longer smile, held in his arms, crying softly. In September of North City, the autumn colors ripple like waves, and videos of tourists praying are everywhere online. I insisted he accompany me. He stayed up several nights, finishing his work, and specially took a day off to be with me. On the winding mountain path, he held my hand as we walked over 100 stone steps, watching my every move, afraid I might stumble. But later when I left him, I thought, in this life, when will one not stumble? At that time, I really liked him. Chapter 3. When did things start to become different? Perhaps it was when I saw that photo. That was the 5th month we were together. Jack has many friends, and for his birthday, everyone was eager to celebrate him. Preparations started more than 10 days in advance. I happened to be on vacation at that time, so I joined in the fun. As we interacted more, they never avoided chatting in front of me. Slowly, I realized that Jack actually took relationships seriously. He proposed earnestly, carefully selected rings, and chose the venue for the engagement. In the end, because of a small matter, the girl still felt that he didn't love her enough. After a big fight, both of them were exhausted. One left in anger, and the other didn't try to hold on. And just like that, they parted ways. They were almost married. At the end, someone showed me a photo, unreservedly saying, speaking of which, you and Susan are somewhat alike. Otherwise we wouldn't have started a gambling ring because of you. In the photo, Susan is smiling brightly. She is so similar to the girl standing under the camphor tree in that painting. When I first learned about this gambling ring, I thought they were boring. Now looking back, I realized that the truly foolish one was actually me. Everyone knows that he has never gotten over his breakup with his first love. He still pays attention to her dynamics. Every year on her birthday, he would specially send someone to deliver the most precious jewelry from afar. Whenever she encounters any difficulties, someone would quickly inform him. No matter what, he would make a trip and quietly help her resolve everything. Not letting her know, not contacting her, yet still unable to let go. Only I naively thought that I was truly different to him. In the end, someone joked, after Susan left, Jack has been dating girlfriends, but we all guessed that he does this just to force Susan to come back. After he finished speaking, everyone present laughed. Jack returned from his phone call, sat beside me, squeezed my palm, and chuckled softly. "What are you talking about? So happy." I looked at him, a chill spreading in my heart, and numbly said, "Talking about your first love." He was taken aback, unusually distracted, and in the end, he couldn't bring himself to say that name, only lightly replied, "What's there to mention?" This was the first time I had the thought of breaking up with him. In fact, I should thank his friends for not keeping me in the dark. Precisely because they disregarded my feelings and told me these things, I was able to wake up and see the situation clearly. Let me understand. I am just Jack's passerby, a means for him to love someone else. Chapter 4. After that day, I faintly felt that something had changed between Jack and me, but neither of us took the initiative to bring up Susan. He also had no intention of explaining anything to me. He became increasingly generous towards me, taking me to various auctions, and anything I glanced at would soon be presented to me. I forgot who said it. It is said that Jack treats every girlfriend well, and when breaking up, he is never stingy. Whatever the other person wants, he gives, whether it is money or resources. Payment received, goods delivered. The night before his birthday, someone sent me 2 transfer contracts, 1 set of villa, and 1 car. When I received them, my fingertips were cold, and then I trembled as I dialed his number. He picked up very quickly. I pretended to be nonchalant and asked him, "It's your birthday, and you're giving me such a big gift. Don't you think it's a loss?" "Loss? I like you and want to treat you well," he replied, his tone slightly rising with a hint of a smile. It was like a playful tease during a passionate moment. I pinched my palm, forcing myself to stay calm. These things are too precious. He hasn't spoken for a long time. I pressed my lips together, and tears fell silently. In the end, his tone paused slightly, and he casually said, "Miranda, don't overthink it. Go to bed early. I'll pick you up tomorrow night." Should I believe it? He does these things because he likes me, not because he wants to break up with me. Chapter 5. The next day, Jack came to pick me up as promised. As soon as we arrived, his phone rang. He stared at the string of numbers on the screen for a long time before letting go of my hand. "You go in first. I need to take a call." A person like him would actually have moments of hesitation. I said okay. After I went in, I casually found a place to sit down, and before long, someone came in from outside. "It's so cold outside. Jack is on the phone with someone?" Who else could it be? Susan? I just got close enough to hear a bit. "It seems she's coming back in a few days." Is that true? Then Jack must be over the moon. After waiting for so many years, things and people finally have a good outcome. No matter who it is, everyone should be happy. In the end, someone sighed. After all the twists and turns, the person beside Jack is still Susan. But at such times, when everyone is reminiscing about the past and feeling their deep emotions, I, as the official girlfriend, feel a bit superfluous, like an outsider. Jack, by the time he returned, they had already stopped discussing it. He pressed his lips together, his expression not looking good, faintly showing some irritation. When he saw me, he concealed those emotions again. He leaned closer, held my palm, and smiled. "Did you have fun? Let's cut the cake together later." I said okay. After cutting it, I will take the initiative to break up. Decent, thorough, And then we really won't see each other again. Chapter 6. In the end, I still couldn't accompany him to cut the cake. Because not long after he said that, someone outside brought in a gift. It was Susan who sent someone. It's a watch. It looks expensive. It's a brand that Jack usually uses. What a coincidence. The watch I gave was also a watch, but I couldn't afford that brand. I gave one that was within my budget and had decent value for money. The one I gave, Jack only glanced at it before having it put away. As for Susan's gift, he looked at it for a long time, long enough that his hand holding the strap turned pale from the pressure. His gaze was deep and somewhat complex. Finally, he raised his hand and put on the watch. So someone took a photo and posted it in their group, saying Susan has great taste. No wonder Jack has been thinking about her for so many years. I originally couldn't see, but there happened to be a girl next to me, who is Jack's cousin. She must have been too excited and didn't really pay attention to who was beside her, so she grabbed my hand and screamed, showing me her phone. Look, they really match well together. On the screen, Susan replied, as long as he likes it, you all keep an eye on him. Don't let him drink too much. Then someone started to cheer and clap. I was pushed to the back. I joined in the clapping. At the bottom of the gift box, there was a card with elegant handwriting that read, I wish to roam the world with you, not caring about the depth of the clouds and the seas. Jack was momentarily stunned. His hand holding the card froze. Then, somehow, it seemed he remembered something, and his expression suddenly became flustered. He looked up and scanned the surroundings, and finally, his gaze fixed on me through the crowd. I smiled calmly and mouthed to him, Happy birthday. Only then did he seem to breathe a sigh of relief. But he didn't call me to cut the cake with him anymore. He had many friends, and they were all having a good time. It wasn't long before they got drunk. No one played with me, so I just watched from the side. In the end, his brother helped him upstairs, and I didn't follow. I was ready to leave directly. Breaking up doesn't necessarily have to be brought up face to face. Just as I was about to leave, his brother chased after me, found me after searching for a while, and handed me a room card. He hurriedly said, Jack is waiting for you on the top floor. Go up and keep him company. I know this person. His name is Santiago. He gets along best with Jack, and he is the one I am most familiar with among his group of friends. But in fact, he looks down on me because he has always been convinced that I am no different from Jack's previous girlfriend. Just a fling that won't touch the heart. What use is it if the main person is returning? 3 parts similar? Chapter 7. I didn't take that room card. Amidst the noise, I spoke up, you tell him. My relationship with him ends here. Santiago looked surprised for a moment, as if he hadn't quite heard me. The hand holding the room card trembled slightly. What did you say? I patiently repeated myself. Santiago furrowed his brow and looked at me for a moment. Are you serious? You know, with him, there's no such thing as regret. He never goes back on his word. Except for Susan. Because he has always been waiting for him. I nodded, my voice firm, He pressed his lips together and looked at me for a moment. No, we were having a good conversation. How did it suddenly turn into? As he said this, it seemed like he suddenly thought of something, but in the end, he didn't ask further, nodding, all right, you can go, just don't forget to move all your things out of his place. Being Sue, it's not good to be seen by others. I chuckled lightly, okay. I acted quickly and packed all the things I had at his place that night. He gave me quite a few things. I didn't take any. I also left those 2 contracts for him, untouched. Since we've already decided to part ways, bringing these things along will inevitably weigh me down, as they remind me of the past. After returning to school, I didn't think about anything and just went to sleep. I slept for quite a while. When I woke up, I opened my phone. I saw a message from Jack. There was only one message, sent at 10 o'clock last night. At that time, I should have just finished talking to Santiago, and in my rush to pack up, I didn't think to check. He said, come up. Chapter 8. I glanced at the time. It was already 2 in the afternoon. I hadn't replied to his message for so long, nor had I gone to find him. If it had been before last night, with Jack's temperament, he would definitely have called me or come to find me in person. But until now, nothing has happened. It seems Santiago has already conveyed my words. This person seems warm and affectionate, but deep down, he is actually quite indifferent. I have already initiated the breakup. He must have had this intention long ago. So naturally, he has no objections and won't say much, let alone try to keep me. My life has returned to how it was before I met Jack. I received a call from my mom. I am alone outside, and she is worried about me, so she frequently introduces me to potential partners. She has always hoped that I could find a good place to settle down. After the call, she sent me a few WeChat IDs. Remember to add. If there's someone suitable, give it a try. I said okay, but still didn't add. My roommate sighed and advised me, why bother? Jack is the kind of person who might quickly find someone new. You should continue on your own path. Shouldn't you? I said it's not because of him. I just feel that if I rush into the next relationship because of the dissatisfaction from the last one, it's irresponsible to myself. I won't always meet the wrong people. I will eventually get married. I will eventually fall in love with someone. But I think, at least not now. When I was 18, I had just started college, and it was hard to meet someone again, but now it seems quite easy. After the breakup, I thought that I would never see Jack again. But it was just so coincidental. I was out shopping with friends, and as we were leaving the mall, I happened to run into Jack and his group. He was dressed very formally, as if he had just come from some kind of gala, in a suit and tie, with a faint scent of woody perfume lingering around him. It wasn't the same brand as before. In that moment of eye contact, he calmly smiled at me, nodded slightly, and then looked away to continue talking to the person next to him. I suddenly felt a sense of relief. So this is what a peaceful breakup looks like. He does this with everyone. No arguments, no accusations, and certainly no grudges. When we meet again, we are still friends. We just brushed past each other like that. As I crossed to the other side of the street, I suddenly received a phone call. It was Jack calling. I was wearing a coat, adjusted the scarf around my neck, and in the cold wind, I hung up his call. But within 2 minutes, he called again. I didn't answer, and he kept calling. Finally, I answered and shouted, "Mr. Bye." There was silence on the other end. After a long pause, just as I was about to hang up, I heard him say, "Look up." Chapter 9. Across the street, I looked at the man on the other side. I couldn't see his eyebrows or eyes clearly, nor could I tell what expression he had on his face at that moment. He had his hands in his pockets, gazing back at me. I asked, "What do you want to say?" His voice was a bit hoarse, and after a moment, he spoke, "Why?" I thought for a while and replied, "Why did I break up with you?" He made a sound of acknowledgement. I felt a bit confused. A person as smart as he was, someone who had people around him who understood things clearly, yet he still had to ask, why? I didn't want to get entangled in this with him, so I casually replied, "My family wants me to get married, and they're pushing me hard." His voice paused slightly, and after a few seconds, he retorted, "Just because of this?" I sighed. Yeah. He seemed to be pondering something, hesitated for a moment, and then spoke again. "Can I talk to you about?" I interrupted him, too lazy to say more. "I already have someone I'm going to marry. I heard your first love is coming back too. Congratulations." He fell silent for a moment, and the sound of a lighter igniting came from his side. After a moment, he smiled slightly. "Yeah." After saying that, he asked again, as if searching for conversation, "The things I gave you, you didn't take any of them. Do you not like them? What do you like? I can have someone send them to you again." I sighed and said, "No need. Let's not contact each other anymore. Let's part on good terms. Goodbye." After saying that, I hung up the phone directly, without looking at him again, and turned to leave. On the way back, I conveniently blocked all his contact methods. Chapter 10. That afternoon, we went out to eat with our mentor. Halfway through the meal, he suddenly received a phone call. I'm going out to pick someone up. He's your senior, just returned from abroad, and happens to be eating nearby. Before long, the door to the private room was pushed open. I looked up and saw the person outside the door. He stood tall and imposing, with his sleeves rolled up, greeting us. People nearby have already started whispering, "It's Eric. He actually returned to the country." I've heard he's quite impressive. At such a young age he's already famous both inside and outside, has won many awards, and is a favored student of his mentor. Not to mention, he's really handsome. The atmosphere in the private room was quite nice. I laughed along for a while, and for some reason, I felt he looked a bit familiar. After he left, it wasn't long before my phone on the table vibrated. The screen showed that I received a WeChat message. "Sue, don't you remember me?" It's strange, I didn't save his contact, but I just remembered. At that time, I had just graduated from university and went to a concert with friends. When it ended, our group came out but got separated by the crowd. I was in a hurry to find someone, and when I turned around, I accidentally bumped into someone and twisted my ankle. That person helped me up and said in a deep voice, "Don't move." He took me to the hospital and even covered my medical expenses. I felt embarrassed. It was clearly my own fault. Yet I made someone else go through all this trouble with me. Therefore, when I came out of the hospital, I asked him for his contact information. After transferring the money to him, I subconsciously said, "There are quite a few kind-hearted people in North City, and they all look pretty good." He asked back, "Oh, are there other kind-hearted people?" I replied, "Yes," but I never encountered him again after that. The man pondered for a moment. "I know many people. Perhaps I can help you look for him." But I thought for a long time and didn't know how to describe Jack. And in the end, I gave up. He smiled, his demeanor calm and composed, with a gentle restraint. "Well then, I hope that the next time we meet, you can achieve what you wish for." I chatted with Eric for a few moments on WeChat. When the topic came to an end, I thought for a moment and asked him, "Do you have time tonight? I'd like to treat you to dinner as a thank you." He said he did. We quickly settled on a time and place. Chapter 11. After dinner, Eric insisted on driving me back to school, just like he had to personally take me to the hospital back then. We stood at the roadside in a stalemate for a while when someone walked by. I heard their voices. "What's going on? Susan was supposed to come back tomorrow, right? Why does Jack still have time to throw a bachelor party here?" "I'm not sure about that, but I heard that Jack is in a terrible mood today, and everyone wants to cheer him up. No wonder. He hasn't smiled at all in the private room just now. They should have just come out to buy something and are ready to head back after." One of them should have recognized me, as he turned back and looked at me and Eric several times. "It turns out Susan is coming back tomorrow. That's great." Eric looked at me for a moment and suddenly asked, "By the way, have you found that person yet?" I said yes. He paused slightly, nodded, and said, "Congratulations." I didn't say much more. In the end, I couldn't resist him and let him take me back. But not long after I got to the dorm, I received a phone call. No notes. It's a local number from North City. I didn't think much of it and just answered. On the other end of the line was Santiago. His voice was low, tinged with a hint of pleading. "Miranda, where are you right now? I'm in a bit of trouble. Can you come over?" I didn't quite understand. "Is there something in North City that you can't handle? Don't call me. I want to sleep." He hesitated, and finally, gritting his teeth, he started to confide in me. "It's Jack. On his birthday. Didn't you ask me to tell him about the breakup?" I went upstairs and mentioned it to him. He didn't say much at the time, but for several days afterward, he ignored me and his temper became unbearable. I hadn't turned the corner yet, until today, when something happened. and I finally realized that he was upset because I didn't keep you. I pressed my lips together. Today? What happened? He pondered for a moment, then sighed. As if in compromise, I'll send you a video, and you'll understand once you watch it. Chapter 12. The next second, his video came through. I clicked to open it. At the beginning of the video, it was recording the whole venue, and I could hear Santiago's voice, probably reporting to his girlfriend, saying it was quite lively and asking if she wanted to come. After a while, the camera froze. Someone leaned in front of Jack and joked, and it was exactly the person I had encountered not long ago. He said, "Jack, I just happened to see Miranda, and there was a handsome guy next to her." He spoke quite casually, and the people in the room began to gossip. Santiago probably found it somewhat interesting, saying in the video, Jack just broke up with his girlfriend, and he would be quite happy to hear that she found a good match. Now he can at least smile a bit, right? I thought the same. But in the next moment, I heard Jack's voice, which was chilling to the bone. It was her who said they were together, and it was also her who brought up the breakup. Is there really such a good thing in this world? My hand froze. I exited the video, feeling somewhat unsettled. Jack, what does this mean? In this world, where can you find such a good thing? Santiago's voice rang out again from over there. Are you done? Jack is really angry right now. Can you come over? I'm begging you. I suddenly felt very tired, with so many people there. How could he be sold or eaten? If it really doesn't work, Susan is coming back tomorrow, right? You can just wait for her to go over. Once she does, Mr. Bai will naturally calm down. Santiago over their side, a bit at a loss. No, you. Oh, how about this? I'll go pick you up. He had just started to speak when he suddenly stopped. A rustling sound reached my ears, followed by very shallow breaths. After a moment, someone let out a soft snicker, their voice slightly hoarse. Miranda. Let's talk. Chapter 13. To be honest, I don't feel like there's anything left for me to discuss with Jack. After thinking for a moment, I was about to refuse. He repeated it again, his tone very flat. Let's talk. You know me. I can be quite relentless in pursuing my goals. If you don't agree to this now, Miranda, I can't promise that I won't do something drastic. I didn't expect Jack to say something like that. This side of him makes me feel a bit unfamiliar. But it also seems like it should be this way. He actually is just that kind of person. I took a deep breath and said, okay, what do you want to talk about? His voice was very cold, making it somewhat hard to discern in the night. You broke up with him. We got back together. In almost an instant, I understood. He must have misunderstood. He took Eric as my marriage partner. I rubbed my forehead, feeling it was a bit absurd. Doesn't he never go back on his decisions? Holding my phone, I thought again of that painting, that breakup fee that could only be described as extravagant, and the words of his friends that had been shared with me. Is it fun to toy with me and use me for amusement? Suppressing my irritation, I cleared my throat. Are you sick? After saying that, without waiting for his reaction, I hung up the phone. Then I also added Santiago to the blacklist. I had already been generous enough, not holding him accountable for his coldness and deceit, yet he had the audacity to say these nonsensical things to me. Chapter 14. I don't know what happened later. From that day on, I would see Jack every now and then. He was different from before. His brows and eyes were cold, and he became increasingly indifferent when looking at others. Every time we met, he would always look at me casually. I thought I had rejected him firmly enough, but he specifically blocked me in a secluded place, took out his phone to show me, pointing at the person on the screen. Is this your boyfriend? Eric, right? What have you considered? If you are unwilling, I can only talk to him. I can no longer tolerate it. You misunderstood. He is not my boyfriend. We have only met a few times and are not familiar at all. What do you want to do? Do you really have to make such a scene? There are some things I originally didn't want to say. You don't have me in your heart, do you? Being with me, treating me specially, is only because I resemble your first love a bit. Now that she is coming back, you give me a car and a house, just to make me back off and not cling to you, right? And now you're pulling this stunt. To be honest, it's quite annoying and really pointless. Jack was stunned, as if he didn't quite understand. What do you mean? After a long while, he finally muttered a curse under his breath, and when he spoke again, his voice was a bit hoarse. I never thought you resembled each other. Who spread such nonsense? I want him to clarify. Giving you things is simply because I want to, with no other intention. I never thought about breaking up with you. These can all be explained. My throat felt a bit dry, so what? Even if these were indeed misunderstandings on my part, but the carefulness with which he answered Susan's call, and the unspoken understanding among his friends, could all of that be fake? No matter how he feels now, when we were still in a relationship, he truly found it hard to forget his first love. Thinking this way, I wanted even less to be with Jack. I asked him, "Do you know what you mean to me now?" His eyes brightened slightly. What? I smiled and said, "After I take a shower, I never wear dirty clothes again." What's the difference between you and dirty clothes? He suddenly took a step back, his face pale, looking at me in disbelief. His friends came over, and upon seeing the scene before them, instinctively took turns advising me. Jack has been thinking about you these days. He hasn't been doing well either. You two were so close before. Is it really impossible now? What can't be discussed properly? I said, yes, it's impossible now. As soon as the words left my mouth, I suddenly remembered that not long ago, they had mentioned Susan in the same way. They said that Jack and Susan were a perfect match, a natural pair. It hasn't been long, and the narrative has already changed. Santiago instinctively tried to mediate. Yeah, how about I arrange for a private room later, and we can all have a meal together to clear the air about what happened before. We said quite a few nonsensical things in front of you before. Those were just our wild guesses, so don't take them seriously. I shook my head. I have things to do, so I won't join you guys. Santiago still tried to persuade. Come on, it's been a long time since we last met. Can you take my number off your blacklist? I still have. He was halfway through his sentence when Jack suddenly spoke up. Forget it. Santiago was a bit reluctant. It's not easy to meet like this. I said. Jack looked at me and repeated slowly. Forget it. Let her go. Chapter 15. After that day, I didn't hear from Jack for a long time. I do occasionally meet Eric. I accompany him for walks near the school. When he goes out for social events and passes by the school, he calls me. I run downstairs, breathless, and he hands me the concert ticket he has, saying he got it by chance and knowing I like to listen to music. He brought it for me. The man has a clear and elegant figure. His demeanor is calm. I think he probably doesn't know how hard it is to get this ticket. He remains polite and composed, and I feel embarrassed to refuse, so I transferred the ticket money to him. He wouldn't accept it, and I had no other choice but to invite him to dinner again. In the end, it turned out that he was the one who paid the bill. At the beginning of December, he was going abroad again, for at least half a year. I specifically went to the airport to see him off. He smiled at me, hesitated as if he wanted to say something, but in the end, he said nothing and turned to leave. Not long after he left, I met Santiago. He sighed and told me, Jack rarely hangs out with them anymore, nor does he go to find Susan. Susan came back this time with the intention of getting back together with Jack, but who would have thought that Jack is completely ignoring her now? A few days ago, I was annoyed by the noise and even pressured Susan's home to marry Susan off quickly. I felt like I was listening to a story, but they were so good before. Who knows? Matters of the heart are unpredictable, and Susan has been following Jack around since they were kids. Even if there wasn't love during those years, taking care of him was the least she could do. I smiled slightly and made no comment. In fact, I have never told anyone. On Jack's birthday, After he put on that watch, I even received a phone call. It was Susan who called. You are Jack's current girlfriend, right? I heard he treats you very differently, but you should also know that we were almost getting married back then. And over the years, we have never forgotten each other. I glanced at the man not far away, laughing and chatting. The tears on my face had long been blown dry by the wind, and I would no longer shed tears for him. I said, then I wish you both endless love. But it seems my blessing fell flat now. Chapter 16. It's quite funny when you think about it. I never expected that the next time I would hear Jack's name would be from a junior of mine. She didn't know where she had seen Jack once, but she found out that I had previously dated him, and specifically sought me out to ask how to pursue by that third young master. I heard that after he broke up with you, he hasn't dated anyone else. Senior, can you teach me how you managed to win him over? At that time, I was busy. Isn't it said that he's easy to pursue? Just create some coincidences and meet a few more times. She replied, I understand now. Soon, I forgot about this matter. But not long after, she found me again, crying heart-wrenchingly. He's not easy to pursue at all. For the past half-month, I've been trying every day to get his attention, but he hasn't given me a single good look. Today, he even told me to get lost. I was a bit surprised. Did you say something? Or did you do something? Otherwise, with Jack's temper, he shouldn't have said something like that. She stopped crying and said aggrievedly, It's nothing. I just mentioned you, saying that everything I've done is taught by you. I broke up with Jack, and it got pretty tense. It's normal that he doesn't want to hear my name. That night, I was just about to go to sleep. But suddenly, the phone screen lit up. It was a text message from an unknown number. The familiar tone was very cold, yet still carried a hint of cynicism. If you dare to teach others how to pursue me, just try it. I pondered for a moment and typed, Sorry, I won't do it anymore. It became quiet over there. No more messages came through. Chapter 17. The days that followed passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, it was the end of the year. I carried my luggage downstairs, exited the school gate, and saw a familiar car. Jack leaned against the car door and saw me. Let's go. I'll give you a ride. I suddenly remembered the first time I met him. He asked me the same way, Where to? I'll give you a ride. We walked together for a while. And now, it has already come to an end. I was just about to refuse when the window behind him suddenly rolled down. The girl smiled brightly and waved at me. Senior, come on, let's go together. Saying this, she got down and pulled me into the car. The ride was very quiet all the way. Until we arrived at the airport, Jack helped me take my things out of the car. I said thank you. He nodded. There was nothing else. Not long after I got home, the junior's call came in. Don't get me wrong, Senior, he didn't come specifically to pick me up. I just happened to see him and guessed he might want to give you a ride, so I volunteered to help. I was momentarily stunned. Just now, I really thought they were together. It's fine. You don't need to explain to me. We haven't been in a relationship for a long time. The junior sighed. What a pity. What's so regrettable about it? She doesn't know that I felt the same way back then, hearing many people say in front of me, Jack missed his first love. What a pity. On New Year's Eve, it snowed heavily. After finishing the New Year's Eve dinner, I sat on the sofa and chatted with Eric for a while. After he left, during the holidays, we would occasionally get in touch and wish each other well. My cousin suddenly leaned against the window, looking outside and shouted, I've seen that car online. There are hardly any in the world. I can't believe I'm seeing the real thing here. I didn't pay attention. Then you should take a closer look. The next day, I received a call from Jack's friend. Miranda, have you seen Jack? It's the new year, and he's not home. We can't reach him. He has never done this before. We are all quite worried. After hearing this, almost instantly, I thought of that car that shouldn't have been here. Chapter 18. I looked out the window but didn't see the car, so I had to ask around. Finally, I spotted Jack near an alley. The man stood by the roadside, his shirt a bit wrinkled, without a jacket, his complexion not looking good, holding a cigarette but not smoking. Upon seeing me, he instinctively straightened his posture. I walked up to him and asked, "Where's your phone?" He seemed a bit flustered, took out his phone, fiddled with it for a moment, and said, "It's out of battery. You should hurry back. This isn't the place for you to be." Jack paused for a moment and said, "I don't even know what's going on. I just instinctively followed you. You mentioned before that your family is urging you to get married." What do you mean? Are you saying you want to marry me? Jack, that's impossible. All along, the person who never easily looked back was actually me. I've been stubborn since I was young. Once you are determined to do something, you must see it through. Letting go of someone is the same. He quietly looked at me, and the corners of his eyes suddenly turned red. After a long while, he casually shrugged, smiled, and said to me, "Miranda, I'm hungry, and I didn't bring any money." I treated him to a bowl of noodles. 18 yuan, not much meat, lots of vegetables. Steam rising, we sat across from each other, our faces blurred. He ate very slowly, but he still finished. After finishing, he returned to the way I first knew him, leisurely wiping his mouth with a tissue, then said, "This is truly the worst noodle I've ever eaten." Chapter 19. After that, I returned to North City. I haven't seen Jack again. We were originally from two different circles, and unless I made a deliberate effort to inquire, it was actually quite difficult to hear any news about him. In the first year after graduation, I entered into another relationship. The other person was the director of a partner company, with a calm demeanor and a friendly attitude, but our relationship was always lukewarm, and we broke up in less than a month. In the spring of the second year, it rained in North City. I came out of the company and ran into Eric. He was still carrying a suitcase in his left hand, looking travel-worn as he stood in front of me, smiling and saying, "Long time no see. This autumn, we got together." He goes with me to do all the things I like. His friends all call me sister-in-law, and they all support me in everything. We never easily say goodbye. We went together to hang a marriage wish tree, with a plaque that has both our names on it. After writing, he meticulously added blessings. He held my hand as we walked back. He smiled and said, "It's really nice." I replied, "Mm." Chapter 20. I suddenly remembered a year. I knelt on the cushion and made a wish. With too many wishes to count, I carefully enumerated them in my heart, afraid of missing any. That person stood nearby watching me, and finally helped me up, casually saying, "If you want something, just tell me, it's quicker than this." He never believed in these things. But once we left the temple, far from the incense, he let out a low sigh and said something. That sentence has stayed with me for many years. He said that meeting me was, in fact, his 3 lifetimes of fortune.